Hey, welcome. My name is Philip Byers. I'm the executive pastor of Ministries at North Coast Church here in the San Diego area, and it is so good to be with you. For those of you that are serving and leading and influencing in a small group leader, small group pastor, director, admin, behind the scenes, up front, lay leader, you're paid, whatever your role is, you are leading and shaping a small group ministry. I just want to say thank you because you have incredible influence leading an incredibly important ministry that I believe in the life of the church. It is the place that God has shaped my life and heart more than anything. I'm so passionate about it. And you play an critical role. You have so much influence in helping lead and shape that at your church. Do you believe that? Do you believe that you have incredible influence to lead and shape your small group ministry and the discipleship and the spiritual formation in the life of your church? Do you believe it? That's the problem, is that oftentimes we don't really believe it because for most of us, we're ultimately not in charge. We're not in charge of what goes on, what decisions are made. We don't have the final say so. And because we don't have that final say so, because we're not in charge, ultimately, we tend to shortcut our influence, or we desire to make our voice heard. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about empowering leadership, making your voice heard, making your voice heard. Because I believe that when your voice is heard in your organization, when you lead up and out and around for those around you, you can maximize influence in your organization, but you can continue to lead through the work that God has done in your life. And you can help shape your church around the small group ministry that you lead, or whatever ministry it is that you lead. And so that's what I want to talk about today. For most of us, we're not ultimately in charge of our organization. I know I'm not. And so when you're not ultimately in charge, you have to convince people above you and around you to help advocate for whether it's budget decisions, staffing decisions, ministry philosophy. And if we're honest, a lot of times in a lot of churches, that's a drain. It's a pain. And so I want to give you some practical tips today. I'm going to hit 5 things that are kind of quick, high level, of things that can help shape your voice and your ideas and really help them matter to your team. So if you want to make your voice and ideas matter to your team, let's jump in. Here we go. I have 5 things. The first thing we can do is we can build relationships. Build relationships. If you just thought about right now, who are the people in your life who have the most influence on you? Like I think about my dad, I think about my mom, I think about my grandpa, I think about some mentors in my life. Most importantly, I think about my incredible wife, Kelly. I think about Kip, who was a coach who was influential in my life. Those people just pop into my mind. My guess is if we pause now and you thought about the people in your life, you would begin to come up with names pretty quickly. And so for us, these aren't people that sit in positional authority to us. They are people that sit in relational influence to us. And so relationships are the currency of influence. And so if you think about that, then you think about that our ability to actually build relationships, not just sit at the top of the org chart or be in charge, is the largest and fastest way for us to gain influence. It's to build these relationships. And so as you think about the influential people in your life, and I think about the influential people in mine, man, those relationships really do matter. And so ways that we can leverage and help build those relationships are things like asking questions. Who are the people you work with? How is trust built? Trust the core foundation of any relationship. And so how do we build trust? How do we get to know people? How do we get to know their story? And then how do we add value to them? How do we serve them? As we serve, as we add value, as we ask questions, we're curious, we build relationships, we get to know people and their story. We really set the tone for the currency and the foundation of relationships. So that's the first one. The second one is study culture. If we want to increase our influence, okay, we want to make our voice heard, then we have to study culture. When you go to Chick-fil-A and you say thank you, they say, it's my pleasure. Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure. Okay, I grew up in Texas. I now live in California. When you go to Chick-fil-A, whether it's in Texas, California, I've been to them in Georgia, where they originated, they all say, it's my pleasure. What is that? That's culture. Okay, culture is the way people behave in a team, in an organization, an environment, in a church. It's how they actually behave, not necessarily what's written on the wall. Okay, it's not stated or aspirational, but what's actual. Okay. And so influence is most easily gained when we swim with the current of our culture, when we swim with the current of our culture. So as we build relationships, like we talked about in the first one, and we ask questions, we take notes, we learn what's celebrated, we learn what's frustrated. Maybe your church might be a last minute culture versus a plan ahead culture. If it's a plan ahead culture and you're the person that's last minute, you're going to rub that culture the wrong way, and you're probably going to lose influence. But if you can learn that, hey, this is a planning culture and I learn how to work within it, awesome. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's a last minute culture. You ever been around a church like that? It's a last minute culture. And in those last minute cultures, if you're the one that is rigid and you have to have it all planned out and you get frustrated when it's last minute, then you're going to short circuit your influence. And so we have to study the culture. We have to study what's celebrated. Is it stories of life change that your executive pastor, lead pastor, your boss, what do they love? Are they stories of life change? Is it pastoral care and taking care of people? Is it, are they numbers driven? What is it? Is their love language? What things do they celebrate? And if that's not your language or how you celebrate, that's okay. But we need to learn theirs. Okay, this is building relationships, but this is studying culture. What's the culture of your church and your team? If we learn the culture and we can speak it, okay, it's like swimming upstream or swimming downstream. And when we swim downstream, we swim with the current culture. And if we swim with the culture, we're going to get more momentum, and influence is a lot easier gain. So number two is study culture. So we talked about if you want to make your voice heard, number one, build relationships. Number two, study culture. Number three, take ownership. Take ownership. Now, I love this phrase, and we can talk about ownership, we can talk about stewardship, but I like the idea of ownership in this context. Ownership is the mentality that I take responsibility for what I've been given for. Okay. I take responsibility for what I've been given. Now, I lived in Texas for most of my life, and now I live in California. And when you live in Texas, you're able to buy a house. When you live in California, you rent a house. And so I know the difference between buying, okay, owning, or renting. Okay. When you own, you're responsible for everything. Okay. When you rent, you have somebody else that's ultimately responsible. Now, it doesn't mean you are irresponsible, but I don't carry the same level of ownership, if you will, when I'm renting. So as I live in those houses, I know that if something breaks, I feel responsible in the house that I own that I need to fix. If it's renting, I know I can call someone else to come and fix it. Now, if I think of my job, my role, the ministry that I'm able to steward and lead, I've really got to make sure that I take ownership of what things I've been given, whether that's big, whether that's small. I really have to lean in and I have to own it. Okay. Because we're not ever going to get more influence if we don't own what we given. Now, you probably know in Matthew 25, the parable of the talents, it talks about 5, 2, and 1 bags, right? You have 3 different servants. Okay. Now, as you think through those different bags, okay, those different talents that they were given, what happens? The person with 5, the person with 2, they own those talents, but the person with 1 goes and hides it. They don't own the talents. They don't steward it. They don't manage it well. And that one's called the wicked servant. They take that one and give it to others. So if you're a person that has been given some talents, which you are, you've been given talents and responsibilities, regardless of your role, if you want to have more influence, if you want to increase the talents, if you want to increase the influence, you've got to crush your area. You've got to be super responsible. You've got to take ownership. And so I notice that with people I've worked with, I know I look for the people that are absolutely crushing it. They are easy to work with. They get their job done well. And when they do that, I would love to give them more. Okay. And so those are the kind of things that I would think of when it comes to taking ownership. Is just making sure I'm thinking through the lens, am I actually leading and stewarding what I'm doing really well? Because if I am, I'm setting up potential for more to be given to me. But if I'm not, I need to slow down and not try to gain more influence. I actually need to make the thing that I'm doing better by taking more ownership. That's number 3. Number 4, making your voice heard, is value perspective. Value perspective. Now, this one's huge. All right. I think about this one, and this is maybe one of the most important things. And I kind of kick this one off by talking about Nehemiah. If you go to the book of Nehemiah, one of the greatest leadership journeys, one of the greatest leadership books, if you will, in the Old Testament. You look at the life of Nehemiah. If you go look at the beginning and see what he did before he rebuilt the wall, he took time to survey the wall. He took time to figure out what's actually needed, what's actually broken. He didn't just charge ahead and fix it. He paused. He looked around. He valued the perspective of what was happening. One of the great phrases that I've learned that's been helpful for me is that nothing's meaningful without context. Perspective is everything. Okay. If I told you that we had 25 people connected in groups at our church, you would be like, well, is that good? Well, if I have a church of 30, that's really good. If I have a church of 1 million, that's not as good. So nothing's meaningful without context. So we've got to gain perspective. What's actually happening here? What's actually celebrated? What's actually valued? What does my church, what does my boss, what do they want for me? I would be foolish to go into my role and do everything that I wanted and think through all the different ways to make changes and solve problems without first pausing and asking what's going on. That's why if you're new in a role, I would encourage you in the first 6 to 12 months, don't change things. Just go in and ask questions. Just go in and survey the landscape. Just go in and gain perspective from the team that's there, from the leaders that are there. If at all possible, go slow. Okay. And value that perspective, value the people that are ahead of you, value the people that are behind you, people that have been around that are new. And so maybe maybe you've been in an organization for a really long time and somebody new comes on your team. Ask them for their perspective. Their perspective as somebody new on your team is going to be helpful. What you also have to understand is that somebody that's your boss, they see more things in the organization than you do. And so the higher you sit on the org chart, the more you see. And so oftentimes, if you think about this box would be like all the influence at your church, all the different things, okay? Your lead pastor, maybe your executive pastor, the box that they're responsible for on this would be huge, okay? And then you think about maybe your role, it's not as big as theirs. I think about my role and I think about my boss's role and I think about his responsibility is this box is huge. My box is not as big as his. Okay. Now, what does that mean? That means when I'm in my smaller box and I think this thing's really important to him in the larger scale of the box, it's not as important. And so many times this is true is we are really going after how my little part of my box, when in reality is our bosses don't see it as this big a part of my box, right? Because if it's my box right here in the corner and this thing's huge, this feels like half my box. But if to my boss, it's maybe 10% of his box. And so he doesn't feel the same level of pressure. He doesn't feel the same level of readiness to maybe jump as you do because you and I feel it as half our box. And so that context, I hope that makes sense in a Zoom context. That context of understanding and value and perspective is super important because when we lose perspective, we make bad decisions. We waste away our influence. When we gain perspective and we leverage it, we can help make our voice heard. All right, that's the fourth one. And now we're going to look at the fifth one. And this fifth one is super important. It's called recognize seasons. We want to make sure that our voice is heard. We've got to recognize our season. One of my favorite things in California is they're called plumeria trees. And so if you've ever been to Hawaii and you've seen that they make a lei, they have these incredible white and pink and yellow flowers. And they're absolutely beautiful, beautiful flowers. And those come from a plumeria tree. Okay. And so you can Google this and you can look those pictures up. But the plumeria trees, they only bloom in a really short season. And when they bloom, it is the most incredible, beautiful tree. When it's not blooming, it's not quite as beautiful. It looks like a bunch of like round sticks everywhere. You see that and you go, man, for most of the year, this is a bunch of sticks. You could cut that tree down. But in reality, what you're really doing is you want to help that tree get the right amount of water, which you can't give it very much water. You want to make sure that you prune it the right way in different seasons so that when it comes time to bloom in the spring, that it produces incredible, beautiful flowers. Okay, that's seasons. And we have to understand that our life operates in seasons. Okay, this tells us in Ecclesiastes 3 that there's a time for everything and a season for every activity. We have to understand that our life operates in the spring, summer, fall, winter rhythm. But that's seasonal things in our life. That's how God ordered the world. We're not always in spring or summer when everything's up to the right. We're going to have the fall season where it starts to get cold. We're going to have the winter season where it starts to get dark. We're going to have those seasons in our life. And without a proper understanding of how seasons work, we will miss how God ordered the world. So we have to stay humble. We have to recognize what our stage of life is. If we're single, if we're married, if we have little kids. I was just talking to one of our young pastors who's about to have his first kid, and he was like, "How is this going to impact my job?" I'm like, "It's not. You're not going to lose your job, but it's going to impact you. You're going to have a little baby at home and your sleep's going to be off. Okay. Your life is going to change. Your time is going to change. And that's okay. That's just the season you're going to be in. Some of you, you're empty nesters, your kids are out of the house. You can work late. You can have all kinds of influence. Okay. You have decades and decades of experience. And guys like me are seeking wisdom from you because of all of your experience. What season are you in? Okay. Are you in a role that has influence or are you in a role that has authority? Sometimes you're in a role of authority where you can make the decisions. Sometimes you're in a role that has influence. And so you have to leverage these things we've been talking about to help make your voice heard. And that's exactly where God wants you to be. He doesn't want or need all of us to all be in charge. He needs the people that do have authority to have incredible people around them that have incredible wisdom with how to influence. You see this time and time and time and time again throughout scripture. Look at the role Samuel plays in David's life. Incredible influence. So, what role do you have? Are you an influential role? Are you an authority role? And how can you leverage that influence and authority? If you're in a role of authority, how do you make sure that you're listening to the people on your team and make sure that they're helping influence and shape? Is it the length of time at your church? How long have you been there? Are you brand new and you come in, like I talked about earlier, you just want to change everything? Or have you been there for a while and now you've gained a lot of trust and now you can leverage that trust that you've earned over time and that God's given you for maybe the next change or the next season at your church? I don't know where you are, but we have to recognize these seasons in our life, that God works in these seasons. And if we recognize the season we're in, then we can leverage that season to help make our voice heard. And not just so that our voice is heard, but so that we can help shape the church in the way that God has empowered us to with the role that we're in. Here's the thing. You're in a role right now. You're right where God has you. And I want to encourage you that you don't have to be in charge to make a difference, that you can leverage your voice to help make an influence and difference. And the reality is, you don't have to be in charge to make that difference because most of us aren't ultimately in charge. Many of us, almost every single one of us, has a boss that makes a call that can tell us no. And that's okay because we get a chance to influence and lead in the areas that we're in. And so I hope these 5 things are helpful. And I look forward to discussing with you. Let's connect. And thank you for the role that you have. And I hope this helps you continue to lead and shape the ministry role that God has put you in. Thank you.